What up, artists? My name is Dwayne Jones. I'm the creative director and founder of a lifestyle brand called Art Pays Me. This is the Art Pays Me podcast, and I'm passionate about finding ways that people like you and me can make a living for ourselves off of our creativity. And, maybe we can make the world a better place at the same time. Let's get into it. All right, Ryan Veltmeyer, is that how I pronounce it?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for doing Art Pays Me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so our paths have crossed multiple times in the last couple of years through changing the narrative and all the different things that you're working on. So what is it exactly that you do?
Well, I'm a musician and a youth worker by trade. And about 8 years ago, I kind of put those two things together and co-founded Youth Art Connection, YAC. So most of my time now, I spend running a small organization. Primarily, we're supporting young artists to learn, we'll say, how to make art, make money, make change. So using their existing art talents and skills and helping them grow businesses and grow projects that can make their communities or the world a better place. The art is a great tool for both of those things.
Yeah. And you're based out of Halifax.
Yeah, although sometimes I tell people I'm based out of my car because I do a lot of work in Cape Breton and around the province.
Okay, so I didn't know that. So I assumed you were primarily based in Halifax, but I saw like one of your alumni is Moose, and so he's from Cape Breton. Is that kind of how people like him came on board?
Yeah, so the Cape Breton connection, and eventually the rest of the province too, Yarmouth, Clare, Bridgewater, some other spots. 2013, we had a chance to bring some youth from around the province to this thing called the Creative Economy Conference. It was in Sydney. So we went up there and met this guy, Gavin Shepherd, who founded the Remix Project and kind of saw what was possible on like a big level for really supporting artists to export and be very professional. Actually, that's where I met. We brought Majay, Alex Ross, Jordan Williams, Delton. A few people came with us on that trip. And yeah, it was very eye-opening. And Bailey, I met Moose, I met some of those guys. And right after that, we created the Artpreneurs program. So we were hearing from a lot of young artists. They just had a lot of talent. Some of them are making money or trying to, but they just needed sort of some early support, just thinking like a business, tackling some of the basic things, how you stay organized, how you talk, how do you keep your purpose and your art at the center while you're also trying to make money. So a lot of those guys were the pioneers and helped us figure out together what does introductory business training look like for very talented young artists.
Right. So what's like, what would you say the biggest issue is for a lot of these young artists? Is it like where to start in terms of creativity, or are they just kind of beaming with their own things and they know what they want to do creatively? It's like everything else.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like I see so many people with a ton of talent, with a strong voice. Creatively, like, they're expressing themselves and like they're already doing that. I find it's more kind of where do you take that? What do you do with it? So like a lot of the business training that exists that youth might have access to, that we started trying to figure out if we could work with that stuff, with the materials or the programs. There's a bit of a challenge for artists around how you frame up business. Most of the entrepreneur development or business training, it's like the messaging is like, do you want to work for yourself and be your own boss and like be in charge and you want to make money? Cool, we're going to show you how to do that. And then it's like, hey, what's your idea for making money? Whereas most artists like create for other reasons. Like we start off creating because it feels good, because it brings us together with people, because it's healing for ourselves or for others. But there's a different motivation for artists. So we usually start creating and then we get good at stuff, get a voice and start to develop that self-expression. And then kind of later, like, oh, how can I make money from this? Like, oh, I guess I'm kind of a business. So it's like that disjointedness between how most business training is offered and where artists are coming from. Like that's one of the biggest barriers. And then otherwise, there's lots of other stuff too, right? Like most young creators I find who are kind of hesitant around money and around, or feeling like they're worth asking for money, and that people are actually going to give them, invest in like their services and products, like being like, oh yeah, cool, this is really worth cash, I'm going to ask for it. So people are like, oh no, don't worry about it. Like we kind of sabotage ourselves because there's this weird relationship with money, and a lot of people will do stuff for free, and that can be good business, even a good thing to do. Mm-hmm. But also like there's a point when that should end. It should be like, yeah, I do really great work. I'd be, happy to sell it to you.
Yeah.
So I think that's self-confidence, or that's being able to act like that. And otherwise networking, like who do you talk to, and communication skills, like for trying to sell to your clients, or trying to get grants, or trying to get investments. And like there's all these kind of confidence and skill sets and communication tools that people need. And then otherwise it's all the basic business stuff, I think, right? It's like knowing who your audience is and how do you communicate with them and sell stuff to them, and what's your plan, how do you measure the money, your costs and your expenses, and how do you know if you're actually making money yet or not, goal setting. Like there's all those kinds of things that are kind of universal skills.
Yeah.
But especially the artists, it's that we self-sabotage ourselves, or we don't want to have to make money, but we're dragged to it because we need to eat somehow.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the biggest hump. Like get over that. Because then once people are over that and they're like, okay, cool, I'm a business, then the whole world opens up, right? Then you can go to like business things and chamber of commerce and business events and like feel like you belong there,
Yeah. Yeah. So like, how did you kind of fall into this? You're a musician. Yeah. That's your creative practice. So did like the struggles you faced as a musician sort of inspire this as well?
Yeah, 100%. So I graduated with like a music degree. I could read and write music, play trombone. That was my main instrument. But I could sing. I could, basic keyboard stuff. I could a lot of skills. But music school kind of trained me how to like audition for orchestras. Mm-hmm. That was just the model that was developed for all these music schools. But there's only one orchestra in Atlantic Canada, and my teacher had that job. So like I was going to school to be trained to do this thing that would automatically force me to have to like go wherever there's a job and live in the States or live wherever. And anyway, so I didn't want to do that. So I stayed in Halifax, or came back to Halifax. But I was kind of just like having panic attacks, sitting in my room, not really knowing what to do, being good at music, and I didn't know it was a business. I didn't know I could be how to pitch to bands or studios or let people know I was around. And it was really panic, especially as an introvert. Like I'm not really introverted anymore, but I was really introverted at the beginning. So like I was always scared. So I wasn't really up for like pushing myself and going up and just kind of doing that. So I was just like trying to survive with like all the talent and all this panic, So youth work is also a nice thing, right? Because there's more jobs in youth and education and community and social work and stuff. So I got a job working at the library in Spryfield as a teen services guy. And that was really cool too. But I'd be like 9 to 5 there. Then I'd go to like sound check eventually. And then for a gig in the nighttime, then be playing there till 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning, get up and go back to work. So I was kind of like trying to do these two separate existences that didn't complement each other and that were kind of grinding against each other. I was always never really happy with either. Like music was too unstable, or I was too scared. I didn't really know how to really launch that.
Yep.
And then youth work and community work was cool, but also I was always in these systems that I didn't have much control over. So even when I had really good ideas, or I was listening to the youth and they wanted to do sleepover in the library and stuff like that, it was just, I had no real power. So I was always like, no. I kept hearing no. So that was really frustrating. So that was kind of my whole world before YAC happened. And then I got a chance to go to this National Youth Arts Week thing in Toronto and met all these cool organizations like doing art and community work together. Like Sketch is one in Toronto, the Remix Project, the Michael Jean Foundation. And I started realizing, I was like, oh, you can kind of like make art and community work the same thing. And it kind of led to, through, it's a long story and like trials and errors, lots of failures and experimenting and learning. But I find it so satisfying. I don't make art. I'm like mainly a bureaucrat kind of, or training and supporting youth and administration and grants and board. And, that's kind of what I spend my time doing now, but I'm surrounded by young artists all the time. And I get to see the Artpreneurs alumni as they kind of launching their business, so full of passion. And some of them are really starting to succeed. And the weekly hub that we run, just that kind of community of artists all coming together to support each other, to learn, to grow. Like, to me, like just being around so many creative people and being a part of their journey is like almost as satisfying as creating all of my own music and art really always was. And I do a little bit still on the side. I work with this guy, Will Robinson, like doing kind of music and visual art together. Like we have some really fun stuff that we still do. And I play trombone sometimes. But I'm really fed just being around so many creative people all the time. So I don't mind doing all this accounting and all this stuff that's not really art.
Right.
Because it enables it for others,
Cool. So what are the different programs? So it's YAC, it's the Youth Art Collective or Connection, sorry.
Connection, yeah.
There you go. Art Connection. Yes. And it has different programs.
Yeah.
So it's Hub, HFX, Artpreneurs, and Emerge. Is that one of the programs or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the Artpreneurs is usually 10 weeks of business introductory training for young artists, and 2D sponsors that lot, but other people help. The Hub is the ongoing kind of thing. So when these one-off programs or workshops or 10-week things end, there's somewhere to keep going. Happens for sure. And Emerge, so that is music festival and conference. We'll do fashion and other arts too. And that we did that largely because so many youth didn't have can't really go to see shows because they're often in bars. So like when they're 15, 16, really they want to connect and really explore their arts. Like they can't really see the people ahead of them who are really doing it in a great way often because of all those barriers, money, bars, and they're legally not allowed to be there. So, and also though, sometimes development wise, like they're not quite ready. They don't have to have ready for the festival, like your EPK, your headshot, your descriptions, you're just showing up with a USB, like knowing all the things, like what the sound people do. So Emerge is really all about giving people the first experience, learning kind of at a nice accessible platform to perform and share that values like young people's voices. And then also though that hopefully it's like training. It's a first experience, so then they can move on to the jazz festival or Pop Explosion or festivals wherever all around the world, and they can like have that first experience so that they can come with some experience to those other festivals, and they can make mistakes that Emerge. So that they don't have to make them at those other places where there's more consequences.
Right.
The other, I guess, the one other thing we've done a lot of is the Justice Arts and Youth in Action.
Oh yeah.
So we've worked with the Michael Jean Foundation quite a bit, and the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia, and a bunch of other folks. And really with that, we did a couple of big exhibitions at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia, so our largest art gallery here. And usually it's pretty hard to access to get shows somewhere like that.
Mm-hmm.
But because the way the Michael Jean Foundation works and some of those other partners, we're able to open it up so that through two exhibitions, 20 artists competed and got $1,000, created art that hung in there for 6 months, and then an exhibition all around justice topics related to different identity groups. So for African Nova Scotians, for Mi'kmaq youth and artists, for survivors of sexualized violence, and for the LGBTQ IAP2S+ community. So that was explicitly about art that dealt with justice and inequity and issues. So that was really cool. We did that with them. But then since then, really what we've done with Jaya is like try to connect with people who are really trying to make change with their art. It's one of the primary goals. Okay. And who are succeeding at it and giving them platforms. So bring them to conferences in Montreal and Toronto and Ottawa, or like when the Creative Cities Summit came to Halifax a couple of years ago, and there's 300 or 400 people working in cities from across Canada. We got a platform there to feature 7 or 8 different local artists using art for social change. So it's often just that, basically just organizing conferences and presentations and work on the platform so that they can just kind of go and do the thing that they're already doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so more people find out about it, right? So these amazing social change makers using poetry or photography or murals or whatever they're doing to create art, like people need to find out about them, you know. So that's basically what mainly what Jai is all about. And with Michael Jean, people like that around who are really supportive and who have a lot of power because they're so famous, like she and that foundation, people like that, like they're really good at like giving the powers that be in the room, so that all the people that really need to be hearing all these ideas and how people are using art to make change and what their experiences are, like the right people hear it and see it and are affected by it. So hopefully also in that way, these artists and activists can have a direct impact.
Yeah.
And we're a small organization, like it'd be hard for us to get all those people out, but when we partner with the Art Gallery and Michael Jean Foundation, like that's when they can really help with like power in the room and platforms and access, because they have like some awesome buildings, awesome connections. You know, that's been really neat exploring how do you do that with a small youth organization with these other people and all work together to like give a platform to these incredible young change maker creatives.
How do you find some of the youth who maybe are distrusting of those establishments and systems and all of that? How are they reacting to collaborating in those types of situations?
It was probably all across the board. Like I think a lot of time people really appreciate the platform and feel like they're heard and they're listened and they feel the power of that and finally having some proper attention.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like you are up there, you know, kind of like presenting and to all these power, and like it's hard to see the benefit, right? So like, all right, cool. Is there any change that's actually going to happen? Like, did anything come of that? And you know, and especially people trying to make social change don't want to end up being kind of this box checked off or this poster child or something for, you know, powerful people, organizations that, you know, are there for the event and for this fancy thing, but maybe don't have their best interests at heart.
Yeah.
Especially because like our society is so dominated by white male supremacy and colonization and Eurocentricity, and like there's all these like deep cultural systemic problems, right? And systemic racism that are way beyond anyone's institution. It's our whole culture kind of has these like really damaging values and ideas about lots of different groups of people. So yeah, so I mean, the beast, that's kind of what we're dealing with. So yeah, so some people find it empowering, have a really good experience, and other people by doing this realize how messed up everything actually is, and then I think I end up probably more pissed off after it. I don't know, but I think it's just really important to do it either way, because like if it isn't a good experience, it creates tension and conversation, and then that's like where action lies and where we can, you know, talk about this stuff and we'll work through it. And if there's a problem, like push each other and learn with each other and grow. So yeah, so I'd say it's probably positive for some people, amazing experience, and others probably like had a negative experience or it's problematic. Either way, it creates the conversation, the dialogue starts, right? And hopefully, even if there's a controversies arise out of it, like gets the dialogue going on and we're all talking about it, and that's what has to happen, right? Really hard conversation, really hard work has to happen if we can have any hope of impacting like systemic problems like systemic racism or homophobia or sexism or those big problems.
Yeah, I find myself grappling with that often. I'm currently taking the approach of working in the system and trying to affect change that way, but then I see like, you know, sometimes criticism comes from that approach. So
Yeah.
it is an interesting thing to see which actually ends up having the impact.
I think we can't be afraid of the criticism, because like that's going to always happen. If you're an activist in the streets, people are going to criticize you. If you're linking in between the system and the street, like, you know, there's challenges there. If you're completely inside the system trying to make change there, like there's, you know, it's going to be really hard in all those. But also we kind of need everyone in all three of those areas, I think, collaborating, working together. The people yelling outside, the people connecting and the people totally inside, like if we can all get on the same page and line all that up, then then maybe we really can make a change. And if people aren't mad and criticizing and it's not problematic, then we're probably not really pushing hard enough, right? If it's easy,
yeah,
it's probably not social change. It's just kind of window dressing.
True. I agree with that actually too, because I feel like there is a need for all. There are people who think that protesting and yelling and everything else is not useful, but I disagree. I think it's needed too, just as much as the softer edge is needed. I think you're right. I feel like having all of them collaborating is the way to action and change.
And like one of my biggest role models that I always look to, like Michael Jean does it really interestingly from inside, right? Because as a governor general, as like the Queen's representative to Canada and an activist, like that was really interesting how she did that. But also like Elle Jones is another awesome local example of a poet who spends a lot of time in community and listening. Inside, like in prisons, working with incarcerated people and making sure their voices are heard. But she also does all the fancy functions, and she was the poet laureate for Halifax. She teaches at universities, so like her example to me is like an amazing example of somebody who is like in community with people inside prisons, works with the prison system, works with universities, goes to big functions, and she's using her platform as a highly famous person, but also still staying really committed to the community, the kitchen tables in the street. Yes. And she's out at every protest too. Like, so I don't know, like, so I admire her so much because she's able to like do a lot of those different things and be in systems and out of the systems, and she's kind of fearless too. So I don't know, people like that I think we need to look towards and aspire and like have confidence. Like, okay, like if she can do stuff like that, then maybe we can be a bit more brave ourselves and pushing and yelling at the right time, but also sitting at the table and being open to collaboration and conversation. Like, I'm a big fan of her as an artist, but also just the way she's fearless, and uses anger at the right time, but also is like so open to talking and meeting and working and collaborating. I think she's based on love too, right? Like everything for her, I think it's at the end of the day, it's about love and connecting.
Yeah, I find it interesting too, like the amount of, because you're right, she's on multiple levels with it. Most people probably wouldn't realize it because they may only know her from certain aspects, but like I've seen the amount of hate, and she gets death threats, a lot of violence stuff thrown at her because of her very public criticism of systems. And
that's the reality. That's why everyone's so afraid to criticize the system and do the work, because it literally puts you in danger.
Yeah.
But that's why we have to be there for her. Like, so it's like to make it less dangerous, like, and then if we're threatened too, then ask her for help, like,
yeah, like,
and that is the reality.
Yeah. And to meet someone like that and realize that, oh, they're actually a nice person. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's so easy to stereotype her as like, the angry activist or something, right? But that's just strategic, and she's doing that because it needs to be done. But she spends a lot of time just as a loving, caring person, supporting youth, supporting community. She told me, I did this little interview with her a while ago, and she told me that 90% of activism is listening. I thought that was such an interesting thing to remember, is that while we try to take action and do a lot of stuff, we have to spend a lot of time actually just listening and letting that inform our action.
Yeah.
She also said too, like, around like prison abolishment and stuff like that, she's like, we can totally blow up these systems. We can reinvent them. Like, we created the prisons in the first place. Mm-hmm. So like, but we have to have the will, I think, and the imagination to imagine the possibility of a new system. And I think artists are good for that too, imagining new worlds. And she also said too, like, the other thing, I keep talking about Al, but like, I think she's a good leader for us in art and social change. And the last thing that really stuck to me, she said, was that basically we all know how to do this work too. Like, everybody literally does. If you have anybody in your life that you love, that you would put yourself on the line for, your kids, your family, whatever, if you know what it feels like to love and to do that, to do anything for somebody to help them, she's like, that's all we need to do, is just be like that. with each other for everything's like do anything, do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
So I thought that was such a good, she said, like, we know how to do this. Like,
Yes.
if we can love, then we can do activism.
Dope. So I'm getting called to give up the room. So if there's any one piece of advice you would have to an artist who's looking at that, would you say, like, look at the Al Jones model as a good example of how you can sort of do both as a creative and an artist? I mean, and an actor?
Yeah, like she's one person, but you know, it's just like she's really good at the specific things and the community she's good at. So someone like her, but she's not the only example, right? Even like you doing this podcast, like I think we just need to look at examples and models and imitate each other, and especially be generous and like really share and you know, go down a limb and trust people. Sometimes you might get burned, but I think we have to support each other, find those role models and that kind of thing, and ask them for help and work together and trust that like we can and will work together. And if one person doesn't work out, it doesn't mean don't work with people or don't have role models. You know? Mm-hmm. But find those people that really make sense to you and be around them, like connect with them, reach out to them, help them. You know, like I'd say to get involved, take action, and from a business sense too, right? Like, you know, if you love what Art Pays Me is doing and call you like right away, just like reach out and like let's make it happen. And don't hesitate or be afraid or don't feel like you're not powerful enough or good enough or some way to immediately get involved in either making money or social change, and go where the energy is, you know, whoever you're vibing with and resonating, and like, wow, like get in contact with them. Don't be afraid of like getting going, you know, because there's nothing, we don't need to wait for anything. We can just go now. And it doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter, you know, if you're up for it, if you have energy for it, like go and ask for help. Like, you know, we can all do this together.
Yeah. So how can people find you if they want to support what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I guess Ryan Veltmeyer is on right now Facebook and LinkedIn.
Okay.
But otherwise, most of my social media time gets eaten up with Youth Art Connection. Okay. So you can find Youth Art Connection on Facebook and Instagram, or it's Youth Art Connect on Twitter. Okay. That's probably the easiest place, or youthartconnection.com, or sorry, youthartconnection.ca. So that's the best place to start. And then from there, you can probably find Emerge or Hub or Artpreneurs or Gaia or the other kind of programs.
Dope.
Thank you so much for listening to the Art Pays Me podcast. Thank you to Langy Beats for the theme music. If you got anything out of this show, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. The more you do this, the more reach the podcast gets, and the more artists I can help learn to make a living at what they love. If you want to know more about what I do, hit me up at artpaysme.com or at artpaysme on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest. See y'all next time.